Hello guys, let's go. My name is Darren, and in today's video I want to showcase you guys a build, a talent build, a rotation, and everything you need to know when it comes to playing Assassination Rogue for PvP. This video is going to be as comprehensive as possible of a guide to help you guys get started playing Assassination Rogue in PvP. Assassination Rogue isn't a spec that I'm currently maining, nor has it been a spec that I've been maining in the past, but it's a spec that I've been playing thoroughly as much as possible, trying to perfect it, trying to find different builds, and trying to find fun ways to play the spec. So I want to showcase you guys this guide in order to help you guys get started playing Assassination Rogue in patch 7.2. So without further ado, let's get on to it. So what's different about Assassination in patch 7.2? It's mostly how it comes with your artifact weapon and the extra trait that you unlock. You want to unlock those traits as soon as possible, so you want to do the Broken Shore event in the Legion zones right here. And I believe the Broken Shore event starts you in Dalaran. You go to the Crassus Landing where the Flight Master is, start the quest with Khadgar, and complete just about every single quest you see on the Broken Shore. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the changes in terms of your artifact weapon. So the first trait you have is 10% damage increase and 10% stamina increase. You want to get that as soon as possible. If you have any points put into your passive trait, you will be refunded every point you put in except for the very first one. So if you have, let's say, 20 points in, you should refund you a lot of AP. So put the first point into Silence of the Uncrowned. Second, we have Strangler. Increase the damage if you can roll by 8%. This is actually a very interesting trait as it offers some different playstyles for Assassination Rogues, which we'll talk about in the video in a little bit. You also have a defensive capability for Dense Concoction. Crimson Vial reduces the damage you take by 4%, increased by 4% every 1 second. I currently do not have this trait, but basically every time Crimson Vial ticks on you, every time it ticks, it has a stack-in buff that decreases how much damage you take every few seconds. Then we also have Sinister Circulation. Successful lethal applications reduce the cooldown of your Kingsbane by half a second. This does have a half a second cooldown, so you can't just keep reducing the Kingsbane, which is the artifact weapon, every half second, basically like every auto attack or so. So every second or every half second you reduce it by half a second. So it does slow it down a little bit. But it's an awesome trait, especially for PvP, allowing you to use Kingsbane a lot more often. So you won't always have to wait for Vendetta and Kingsbane to line up. You'll actually be able to use Vendetta and Kingsbane, and then you might be able to sing 1 or 2 Kingsbanes before Vendetta and Kingsbane are lined up together. So this is actually pretty good for PvP if you're able to line it up, and if you're lucky. Also, a lot of your other traits got buffed, so I recommend when you're building your artifact weapon, build the extra traits first up until Sinister Circulation, and then start investing in points into any one of the other traits, because for PvP all of them will need to be accomplished either way. Let's take a look at the Assassination Talents and what I've been running recently. Now, there's a couple of different builds when it comes to playing Assassination, and thank God there are a couple of different builds. Because of the extra trait that we was added, for Strangler, damage rewards is increased by 8%, and this is the build that I've been running. You can technically go for a blade-centric build, but I feel like the poison-centric build is still a little bit stronger, mainly because of the spread pressure and spread damage that you can do, as well as the extra CC that you can provide, because, no, not CC in a way, but Deadly Brew, Wound Poison, buffed by Master Poisoner, still does put a dampener on the healing that the healers are putting out. And being able to maintain it on more than one target that are getting healed or that require healing can put a lot of pressure on the enemy team. But let me talk about different builds. So the original build that most people are playing right now is Master Poisoner, Subterfuge, Vigor, Elusiveness, Internal Bleeding, Alacrity, and Venom Rush. Now this is the general build. It ups the damage of most of your poison-based abilities, uses Subterfuge so you can roads in the opener and deal a lot more damage, and allows you a little bit of CC in the opener. Vigor for the extra energy, because Assassination doesn't really have an issue in damage, you need a deeper stratagem at any point. Elusiveness, because that's usually the best one for PvP, so you can run Cheat Death and BGs. Internal Bleeding and Prey in the Weak have been kind of like, which one is the better option? And right now, Internal Bleeding is the better option for the CC and extra bleed damage you put out on the enemy, which kind of offers you possibilities for some hemorrhage plays. But Internal Bleeding right now is probably the best one for sustained damage, and overall best one for damage in general. Then we go for Alacrity, unless you're running Hemorrhage with Exsanguinate, which I'll talk about that build in just a second, but Alacrity. Then Venom Rush. Now, for another build you can technically run is Hemorrhage into Exsanguinate, and this is the decent build. Mainly because of the damage increase from Subterfuge and the increase from your artifact weapon, increase from Hemorrhage for bleed damage, you have Exsanguinate for a lot of your bleeds just ticking at the same time, and then Internal Bleeding, allows you a little bit more of capabilities for PvP. I feel like this build is specific for some arena situations, so I'm not really sure which arena situations this would be good for. Maybe somebody against paladins or somebody who keeps cleansing your poisons. But I feel that this is a fun build for BGs, and this is something for anybody who is a bleed-centric assassination rogue or really wants to make bleeds work. This is something for you guys to try, as I think you'll actually enjoy it. But in most arena situations, you will want to go for Master Poisoner and a poison-centric build. For your honor talents, it's basically a similar thing. You got Medallion, Adaptation, Relentless. Basically Relentless if you are a human or an orc in some situations, but mostly Medallion is the best option. Then we have Reinforced Armor unless you're going against melee. Sparring is a better option. But then you gotta make sure this is right melee, because Death Knights can get through sparring, because they're physical attacks, but they're not, they're melee attacks, but they're not physical, they're magical for the most part. So I think against warriors, outlaw rogues, and Windwalker monks, sparring is probably a better option. Maybe even survival hunters. Then you have maneuverability, which is pretty good in most situations. You can of course go cut to the chase if you don't need the extra mobility, or if you're facing against other rogues or ferals to make sure you can keep with them or stay away from them. Unfair Advantage is probably the best option for the damage increase. It's fairly useless if you don't have more health than the enemy. So in some arena situations like 2v2s, it's really important for you to have more health than enemies for your damage to be higher. But that's really as far as that goes. It still is the best option. Deadly Brew is still the best in this row, and then Creeping Venom is still the best one in this row. I tried System Shock. It's interesting, but Creeping Venom ends up being a little bit more of an oomph, especially if you get it up early. Now, how do you play Assassination? Well, it's fairly simple. Assassination is all about maintaining your bleeds. Maintain Corrode on targets, then you want to also maintain your Rupture, which can be 5 common points, but can be also 3 because... So the common points really just determine just how much damage you'll be doing over a period of time, not the intensity of the damage. Then you have your Kidney Shot, which also has capabilities for your internal bleeding to deal more damage. Basically, you would want to line up with Kidney Shot whenever you're about to stun a healer, like I said, Druid, when you're waiting for them to get out of bear form, and stun them to really deal a lot of damage. And when you're not applying your dots, or when you're not stunning the enemy for a kill, you'll want to make sure you get Envenom. Using Envenom early, as at least what I found in, like, say, Battlegrounds, when you're trying to spread damage to more than one target, using Envenom at, let's say, even 2 common points isn't a terrible idea, because you're able to use Envenom and get Creeping Venom up as soon as possible. The earlier you get Creeping Venom, overall, the more damage you will be doing to the enemy. So how do you play Assassination? It's fairly simple. Start in Stealth, you want to establish a Cheap Shot, you want to get a Corrode up, Mutilate, or Rupture. That gets you basic abilities rolling on the enemy. What you do from there is really up to you. The general playstyle is use Mutilate to build up common points. Basically, you don't want to do anything until you have 5 or 4 common points. So you want to just keep building common points unless it's a different situation. And you want to make sure to maintain your dots, make sure they don't fall off. Once you don't have any dots that you need to refresh, you Envenom. You put Creeping Venom and you apply yourself an Envenom buff so your poison application chances are a little bit higher. That's really about it. If you are going in to stun lock the target, let's say like a Druid or a healer or whatever that you're trying to kill, you just simply stun them with a Kidney Shot and try to sink as much damage to them as possible. When you are going for a Kidney Shot, however, what I like to do is I like to pool my energy, right? So for example, let's say you were facing a Druid. And with a Druid, like every other class, let's say you want to go up to a Druid, you want to make sure to put a dot on them, put every other dot, and let's say to go into bear form, or let's say it's a healer with some powerful defensive. While the defense is up, you want to pool your energy and maintain 5 common points. As soon as that powerful defensive is gone, you can stun the enemy, mutilate, into an Envenom, and then continue to mutilate as much as you can in order to build as much damage into the enemy. So that's probably the best way of going about in terms of knowing how to use your Kidney Shot properly. Or you can use Kidney Shot to CC an enemy in general. Like let's say you're trying to CC a rogue who's sitting on your healer, or a warrior who's sitting on your mage. So you can use it for control. One of the advantages of Assassination Rogues is the capability for you to maintain damage over time over multiple targets. For example, let's say you have target A, which will mark with a skull, and target B, which will mark with an X. Target A, let's say you open up on them, Cheap Shot, make sure you have Corrode up, put a Rupture on them, and you'd sink in, let's say, a Creeping Venom onto them. Normally Creeping Venom will be applied, but this is not a PvP dummy. Let's say you build up a couple common points, and you want to make sure to put pressure on more than one target. You go to another target, you apply your bleeds on them, Rupture, and you want to make sure you get a Creeping Venom on them, and then go back to your main target. Now you have 2 different targets bleeding, and bleeds also give you energy, so the more bleeds you can have, bleeds with poisons together on a target, the better. Let's say you're hitting this main target, and the secondary target is about to lose its poisons or damage over time. Another thing you can do as assassination is just throw a poison knife to make sure your dots are applied to them. When you apply dots, you apply your deadly poison and your wound poison together, which reduces the healing that they take, as well as puts a damage over time on them. And if you want, from time to time, you could just go back and refresh the damage over time on the enemy. It is integral that you maintain your bleeds with poisons, so don't let your poisons ever fall off. So if you have the extra energy, just run up, make sure you're in line of sight of the target, throw a poison knife at them to make sure that the poison is still applying to them, whether you're trying to reduce the healing or simply to deal damage to them. So watch out for situations where you're able to dot up more than one target and put pressure on more than one enemy target. Now, how do you burst this assassination? Basically, you want to make sure that all of your dots are up, so you want to make sure your corrode is up, you want to build up for your rupture. Now that everything is up, you want to usually build up from your kidney. And when you use your kidney, you throw the kidney down, you empty out your energy, vendetta, continue to empty out your energy, and then you combo your artifact weapon into it as well. And then continue hitting your enemy with as many mutilates as possible. Make sure to maintain your dots as best as you can. And just continue hitting mutilates, and whenever you don't need to refresh your dots, spend your common points into envenoms. That's the only way to really burst this Assassination Rogue. The burst really comes from your damage over time being on the enemy, and when you pop Vendetta, you also apply another layer of poison damage, and you make the enemy take 20% more damage. In the past, Assassination used to be able to build up for common points and hit the enemy really hard based on how many common points you have. Now the damage is basically more or less passive with your damage over time and auto attacks with poison proc applications, but with Vendetta being up on the enemy, them taking 30% more damage, you basically are taking that sustained damage and increasing the intensity of it, especially when you allow up another bleed damage over time, like your artifact weapon Kingsbane. Some of the useful macros that I found is, for example, a focus blind macro. This macro will basically blind your focus target. So I have the train dummy, and when I hit him with a blind, it'll blind him. Another useful macro is a shadow step kidney shot macro. So let's say you have a focus target, let's say it's a healer, and you have common points, and you want to stop the healer from casting, or you want to, let's say, hit one target and you want to swap your burst onto the healer. Well, with this macro, by spamming it, you basically apply kidney on your target so you can easily swap onto your enemy. Another useful macro for all rogues is a sap macro. Sap, clear target, target enemy, sap. So basically with this macro, you spam it, and it'll keep rotating through different enemies that you have in front of you. This is better for finding other rogues in arena, and finding ferals or any other stealthies. That's really what this macro is really useful for. It's not really used for sapping people, which you can, but it just keeps switching targets over and over and over. It doesn't really give you that much precision. And this is everything that I have for you guys in order to help you guys get started playing Assassination Rogue in PvP. For the most part, this spec is all about being as aggressive as possible, maintaining your dots, making sure to line up your bursts together with other players, and locking down the enemy when you are trying to burst. This spec has a lot of damage and capability to cleave more than one target, so feel free to share the love and your bleeds with anybody around you, and make sure to maintain your poisons on just about everybody you meet, as it will be helpful down the line. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this guide for Assassination for PvP for the patch 7.2. My name is Dalrin, and hopefully I'll see you guys in another video.